My boss keeps nominating me for a gay professional award outside of our organization, repeatedly, even though I am not gay. I have expressed verbally that I am not gay, and even if I were, I wouldn't want to be recognized for my sexual preferences that would be a part of who I just am. Is there something I can legally do about this? It's weird and frankly embarrassing, but I'm not certain it's sexual harassment or a legal issue. I've had multiple, direct conversations with my boss that consist of something like, "I'm not comfortable being nominated for these awards. Can you please knock it off? Thanks in advance." Relevant comments. Commenter. What did your boss say in response? Has your boss shared any motivation for doing this? OP. The first time I addressed this was utter bewilderment and shock. I genuinely believe this person, with the best of intentions, initially nominated me based on an erroneous assumption that I am gay. My boss is very involved in inclusion-esque statements and events, so I think this was originally considered to be a thoughtful thing to do, certainly with zero ill will or intent. This is where it gets more into assumptions and feelings, but subsequent requests have been met with that, "Oh, you're taking this too seriously," sort of vibe or a wink and a nod, as if I am actually gay and it's some secret now between us. It just feels a bit like my boss was embarrassed with my earlier correction that I'm not gay, and has since tried to downplay it by nominating me again. OP responds to the comment that this is sex-based harassment. Thank you very much for your answer, and for taking it seriously. As I understand it from your suggestion, my next step will be to electronically communicate that this is unwelcome and needs to stop so it's recorded and preserve the communications, continue to document, then escalate if needed. I otherwise really like my job and company, so I'm trying to navigate this as carefully as possible. That's the other crazy part about this. The organization who lets me know I've been nominated publicly broadcasts this information, which seems horrifying if you've chosen not to be out yet. It's such a weird thing that I never dreamed I'd have to deal with. Thank you again. It's very much appreciated. OP when told to contact the organization before making a life-destroying public announcement. Thanks for raising this. I fully believe the NICE Award folks have the best of intentions, but the potential ramifications the way they are proceeding now could be devastating. Consider it done. OP in a deleted comment describing their boss. My boss is very involved in inclusion-esque statements and events, so I think this was originally considered to be a thoughtful thing to do, certainly with zero ill will or intent. This is where it gets more into assumptions and feelings, but subsequent requests have been met with that, "Oh, you're taking this too seriously," sort of vibe or a wink and a nod, as if I am actually gay and it's some secret now between us. It just feels a bit like my boss was embarrassed with my earlier correction that I'm not gay, and has since tried to downplay it by nominating me again. I posted this a bit below. This is only my speculation on the matter. As for why I was nominated, I really like flannel and tend to talk about my weekend hauls from Home Depot. Lil be the first to admit have some stereotypically male qualities, particularly as a woman in a male-dominated industry, but my sexuality has never been brought up beyond the whole. I'm actually not this thing you're nominating me for, can you fudging not? Update 1. I decided to address this one final time in person as my company really doesn't have a sexual harassment policy beyond don't do that. I met with the Michael Scott-esque boss and with another leader who is in a legal operations role within our organization. I used pointed phrases that were brought up by legal advice posters, like sex-based harassment. Legal advice poster had suggested that this seemed like a misguided and inappropriate way of helping me to come out. In the course of our conversation, it became clear that this is exactly what was happening, and I in turn made it clear that it wasn't really anyone's business to help me with things outside of my role at work. I also stated this is the last time we would have this conversation without escalating it to the New York State Human Rights/Office of Sexual Harassment. Michael Scott was profusely apologetic, and the other witness was horrified this was happening. Later, my CEO called to let me know it was appalling, would never happen again, and to ask if I needed a few days off. He also thanked me for bringing the issue up and promised change, whatever that means. I feel like everyone took it seriously, and the best possible outcome, so far, is it didn't turn into a legal issue, though I realize that is not quite as high drama or exciting. I also contacted the organization who continued to publicly notify people of their awards and received an oddly clipped and rude email in return. I made it clear this is not okay, and the way they operate could cause unintentional but irreparable harm. Thank you to everyone who provided advice and also took the issue seriously. There were times I felt like I was not being able to take a joke, but you guys reassured me that this wasn't okay, and also how to fix it. Y'all rock. Thanks. Relevant comments. Commenter. Man, I really want to read that email, with identifying info clipped out of course. OP. Me. Hi there. I've received a few of these emails and want to make it clear that while I am fully on board with your mission, I am not actually gay myself. I worry a bit about those who may have told a select few people at their own organizations how they identify and are nominated with good intentions, and then essentially outed publicly by the nomination and award-winning process. This could potentially be a huge issue if someone has not chosen to be out. Response: someone at your work nominated you. Sent from my iPhone. I'm far more peeved at the NBD response than I am over anything else. I'm sure it's a low-effort way of denying responsibility, but ugh, so frustrating. Update 2. Well, here we are. I thought the whole thing was wrapped up in a nice little bow, but oh no, because life is apparently a circus. Fast forward a couple of months after the everything's fine. We've got your back, spiel from the CEO, and guess what shows up in my inbox? Another nomination. Yes, you read that right, another one. At this point, I'm starting to feel like I'm in some bizarre Truman Show episode, except instead of hidden cameras, I'm getting annual nominations for Gay Professional of the Year. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I found myself in a full-blown rage spiral in the middle of my open office. My coworker Katie from marketing saw me stewing and asked, "You okay?" To which I responded with a borderline maniacal laugh, thrusting my phone in her face. She read the email and gave me a wide-eyed stare before muttering, "How are you not in jail?" So, naturally, I went straight to Michael Scott, aka my boss, who is somehow still here despite all this, and confronted him. I was trying to keep calm, but he looked at me with that wide, oblivious smile that makes me want to throw things. He hit me with, "Oh, come on. It's just a little fun recognition." And I absolutely lost it. Fun recognition? I told you, again and again, that I'm not gay, and I don't want to be nominated. This isn't cute anymore. It's straight up harassment. I was loud, and you bet I didn't care who heard. The room got quiet. The vibe went from office casual to, am I about to get fired? To his credit, or maybe because he saw the lawsuit flash before his eyes, Michael started apologizing. But it was that half-hearted, "I'm sorry you feel that way" type of apology that made my blood boil. He followed up with, "Well, I thought you'd come around. I mean, you're always hanging out with Steve from HR after work, and I just figured." That's when I realized this wasn't just about an award anymore. My boss was actively trying to push me into some sort of box he had constructed in his head. This was about him feeling validated in his assumptions, not about inclusion or recognition. The Steve comment was the cherry on top. For the record, Steve is just the only other person in this place who also enjoys overpriced craft beer. We're not dating, we just hate the same things. At that point, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I was dangerously close to doing both when, like clockwork, the CEO appeared. Apparently, the whole office heard me lose my mind and thought it'd be a good idea to call in the big guns. The CEO looked at me, looked at Michael, and then sighed like a dad who just discovered his kid spray-painted the garage again. The CEO pulled me aside into his glass office, because why have a private conversation when the entire office can watch? And asked me what happened. I let it all out, and to his credit, he didn't try to gaslight me. He genuinely seemed horrified. He kept saying things like, "I thought we handled this," and "I don't understand why this keeps happening." I responded, "Because no one actually did anything the first time." And he nodded like I just told him the meaning of life. Here's where it gets wild. Instead of just offering me time off again, because clearly that solved nothing the first time, he straight up offered to transfer me to a different team in a completely different city. I'm talking relocation package, housing assistance, the whole 9 yards. It felt like an offer that was too good to be true. But at the same time, it also felt like they were trying to quietly sweep this whole mess under the rug by shipping me off somewhere I'd have no connections. I told him I'd think about it, but I don't know. Part of me wants to take the offer and escape this nightmare. The other part of me feels like I shouldn't have to uproot my entire life because my boss can't take a hint or follow basic employment laws. Oh, and for the cherry on top, the award organization sent me a follow-up email, this time congratulating me for making the finals. Finals. My reaction? Delete. Done. I refuse to engage with them anymore, and they can take their awkward iPhone-signed emails and shove them where the sun doesn't shine. So, that's where I'm at. I've got a relocation offer on the table, a boss who still doesn't get it, and a nomination for an award I'll never deserve because of something that was never even true. Life's funny like that. Update 3. I wasn't expecting to update again so soon, but here we are. After my last conversation with the CEO and that ridiculously tempting relocation offer, I decided to sleep on it. I was really torn. On one hand, escaping to a new city sounded like a fresh start. On the other hand, it felt like I was being subtly pushed out. Why should I have to leave when they were the ones who created this circus? But while I was busy mentally spiraling, life had other plans. The next day, I walked into the office, prepared to just power through my usual grind. You know, lay low, avoid Michael Scott, and hope the relocation pressure would give me some time to figure things out. Spoiler alert, it didn't. When I got to my desk, I noticed something strange. My inbox was overflowing with unread emails and not the usual work junk. I had messages from people in other departments, clients I hadn't spoken to in months, and even some personal contacts. Confused, I opened one of the emails. It was from Steve. You know, the same Steve that my boss thought I was dating because we like beer. His subject line? WEF is going on? Inside was a screenshot from our company's internal newsletter. And there it was, in black and white. Congratulations to my name, finalist for the Insert Awkward Gay Award. I almost threw my laptop out the window. Somehow, this got published internally without my knowledge, without my consent, and certainly without any warning. And because everyone reads the damn company newsletter, because, you know, HR loves to slip in important info like benefit updates, everyone knew. It was like my worst nightmare come true, except instead of it happening in the broader public, it was within my work bubble, the last place I wanted this to blow up. Cue the absolute chaos. People were slacking me, emailing me, coming up to my desk to congratulate me on this incredible achievement. Some people were genuinely happy for me, while others clearly didn't know how to react, because let's face it, they know I'm not gay, and this is all just absurd. But wait, it gets worse. Apparently, this little finalist announcement was made after a company-wide email went out earlier in the week highlighting our values of inclusion and diversity. Basically, the newsletter framed my nomination as some sort of shining example of how progressive and inclusive our workplace is. Translation: I was now the unofficial poster child for diversity, and all because my boss couldn't stop nominating me for an award I didn't want. I was seething. But here's the kicker. It turns out my boss wasn't even the one who submitted the newsletter blurb. No, this was a new HR initiative to boost morale. And guess what? They didn't even check with me before doing it. I stormed straight to HR, no longer caring about being polite or diplomatic. I found Karen, yeah, her name is really Karen, sitting at her desk, looking smugly self-satisfied as if she'd just saved the world. The conversation went something like this. Me, why the hell was I featured in the newsletter without my consent? Karen, looking confused, oh, I thought it would be a nice surprise. You're a finalist for such a prestigious award. Me, prestigious? I've told you guys repeatedly that I don't want this nomination. I'm not gay, and this is making me wildly uncomfortable. How is this so hard to understand? She gave me that HR smile, you know, the one. That placating grin that makes you feel like you're the problem for being upset. Well, she said, we just wanted to celebrate diversity. It's important to highlight stories like yours. Like mine? What story? That my boss keeps assuming my sexuality and now HR thinks I'm some sort of queer icon? This was beyond a joke. I didn't even bother continuing the conversation. I went straight back to the CEO's office. By this point, I was vibrating with rage. I barged in, yeah, I wasn't waiting for an invitation, and laid everything out. The internal newsletter, the emails, the fact that now half the company thought I was some trailblazing LGBTQ+ hero. His response? Shock, obviously, but also helplessness. He promised me again that things would change and offered, get this, a full 2-week paid leave so I could clear my head. A mental health break, as he called it. I didn't even know what to say. It was like they were trying to throw band-aids at bullet wounds. Take a vacation? Really? As I sat there, staring at the CEO, it hit me. I was never going to win this battle. Sure, I could escalate, I could lawyer up, but at this point, I was so tired. The constant emotional drain of having to correct people, to defend myself, to fight for basic respect was exhausting. And the truth? I didn't know if I had the energy to keep going. So, I walked out. I took the day off, grabbed my stuff, and just left. I needed space to think about whether I even wanted to stay at this company anymore. The relocation offer was still on the table, but was that really the solution? Or was it just running away? And honestly, I still don't know what I'm going to do. Part of me wants to take the 2 weeks, come back, and raise hell. The other part of me is just done. Maybe I should take the relocation, start fresh, and let this weird, convoluted chapter of my life end quietly. Update 4. After taking a couple of days to cool off, and by cool off, I mean sit in my apartment, angrily binge-watching true crime documentaries, I knew I had to make a decision. Stay and fight? Or take that relocation offer and bounce? It felt like I was at a crossroads. Either I let them push me out, or I burn this whole thing down. And honestly, the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't ready to go down quietly. But the final straw? That came when I got a call from Steve, the same guy who was dragged into this mess by my boss's wild assumptions about our afterwork beers. Steve, normally the chillest person I know, was furious. Apparently, he'd started getting the same kind of attention I had, people congratulating him on his relationship with me, giving him knowing looks, even dropping comments about how it was so brave for us to be out as a couple at work. The whole thing was snowballing, and fast. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everyone who's ever been put in a box they didn't fit into, everyone who's had someone else decide their narrative for them, and then been forced to live with the consequences. So, I went nuclear. The next morning, I marched into the office early before anyone else got there and headed straight for the CEO's office. I wasn't scheduled to meet with him, but I didn't care. I knew he'd be in early prepping for some big exec meeting, so I let myself in and sat down at his desk. He walked in a few minutes later, startled to see me sitting there like some kind of vigilante at dawn. Before he could say anything, I launched into it. Everything. I told him that this had gone far beyond a few misguided award nominations. It had spiraled into a full-on harassment campaign that was damaging my reputation, dragging Steve into a mess he had nothing to do with, and ultimately turning the entire company culture into a joke. I could tell he wanted to brush me off with more corporate speak about inclusion and diversity, but I wasn't having it. I slammed down a file I'd been working on, a detailed record of every single instance of this nonsense, from the initial nomination to the internal newsletter fiasco, every inappropriate comment from Michael Scott, every awkward conversation with HR, every shady email from the award committee. I even had screenshots from Steve, documenting how people were starting to make weird comments to him too. And then I said the magic words, hostile work environment. Now, if you've never seen a CEO's face go from smug to terrified in under 5 seconds, let me tell you it's glorious. He immediately tried to backtrack, offering me more time off, saying things like, "We'll handle this internally, and you don't need to escalate." But it was too late. "I'm not asking for time off," I said, standing up. "I'm asking for accountability. And if I don't get it, I'm walking straight out of this office and into the hands of every employment lawyer in New York City." He went pale. I had him. But that wasn't enough for me. I wasn't just going to settle for some quiet apology and a shove under the corporate rug. No, I wanted this fixed. Not just for me, but for Steve and anyone else who might find themselves in a similar position. I told him I wanted an immediate public retraction of the newsletter, an apology from both HR and Michael Scott, and a formal review of the company's inclusion policies by an outside consultant. And on top of that, I demanded that Michael Scott be removed from any position where he had influence over other employees' careers. He was a liability, and we all knew it. The CEO didn't even hesitate. He knew he had no choice. He agreed to everything. And just like that, I walked out of his office, my heart racing, feeling more powerful than I had in months. But wait, it gets better. By the end of the day, the internal newsletter sent out a retraction, and I still have it saved because it's just too good. It said something like, "Due to a miscommunication, we incorrectly featured my name in a recent company-wide announcement. We apologize for any confusion and are currently reviewing our internal processes to ensure this does not happen again." It was vague and corporate, but you better believe everyone knew what it was about. And then, the apology emails started rolling in, first from HR, then from Michael Scott himself, who clearly was terrified for his job now. He didn't even try to make a joke this time. It was a full-on grovel. "I'm deeply sorry for my behavior, and I recognize the harm I've caused. Please know this will never happen again." And the cherry on top? Michael was quietly moved to some back office role where he couldn't do any more damage. No more managing people, no more nominations, no more casual sexism disguised as inclusivity. From what I hear, he's been reduced to running diversity trainings on PowerPoint slides he clearly doesn't understand. As for me, well, I turned down the relocation offer. Why should I be the one to leave? They tried to force me into a box, tried to rewrite my story, and I didn't just refuse, I flipped the whole narrative on them. And Steve? He and I are still grabbing beers, laughing about the absurdity of it all. No romance, no secret relationship, just two people who bonded over the absolute chaos of corporate life. So, what's next for me? Honestly, I don't know. But here's what I do know. I'm not afraid to fight for my boundaries anymore. And the next time someone tries to put me in a box, they better be ready to deal with the consequences. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. Stay fierce, stay true, and never let anyone write your story for you.